in the steel and glass heart of Orin Station, where rain struck the skywalks like judgment against the cold metal city, a fragile decision hung in the air. Kelvin Hail, a survey worker soaked by the raging storm, stood at the doorway of a stranger's life. Inside the small apartment, under a soft synthetic blue glow, Verl watched him quietly from behind a curtain. Her skin carried a faint ethereal light, so different from the rigid order of the city around them. She was a widow, and in this tightly controlled world, that alone marked her as unstable. Her time was nearly gone. Soon the inspectors would arrive with their sterile tablets and colder eyes. They would revoke her permit and remove her from the city's ledger as if she had never existed. Desperation speaks its own language, especially in moments of stillness. Verl spoke it now. "If I undress?" she asked softly, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "Will you stay human?" It wasn't a request for intimacy. It was survival. A desperate attempt to create the appearance of a shared life, something the system could scan and approve. Kelvin met her gaze with the calm understanding of someone who knew exactly what desperation cost. He had his own needs as well. Shelter from the storm, a locked door, warmth against the cold creeping into his bones. He could have taken advantage of the moment. He could have bargained. Instead, he gave her something unexpected. "If you undress, I'll stay," he said calmly. "But I sleep in the chair. I cook first, and you set the pace." He offered her control when the world had stripped it away. It was a fragile foundation built in a single breath. Her apartment was small but carefully ordered, a quiet world she had built against the chaos outside. In the kitchen, Kelvin salted a flank of reef ram with practiced precision. The scrape of sharpening steel and the soft sizzle of meat on a hot pan filled the room, simple sounds of purpose and stability. He moved with quiet competence, every action another brick in the wall they were building against the inspectors. They ate standing at the counter, sharing a single plate in silence, a quiet pact between equals. As promised, she let the crystal fiber wrap fall gently to the floor. It was not seduction, but defiance. In a city where intimacy had become paperwork, this was her quiet rebellion. Kelvin didn't approach her. He looked once, then calmly turned to fix a flickering light panel above the table. His hands were steady, his purpose clear. He was not a man who took. He was a man who repaired. That night he slept in the chair, a silent sentinel protecting the fragile routine they had created. In the morning she invited him to the bed, not for the inspectors but for warmth. He lay carefully on top of the covers, offering his hand palm up between them. A bridge, not a claim. Their fingers intertwined, and for the first time in a long while, Verl's breathing lost its fearful rhythm. The inspectors arrived with the morning chime. Their expressions were blank with professional courtesy as they scanned the apartment. Their eyes lingered on small details. 2 mugs on the counter, Kelvin's jacket hanging near the vent, the indentation in the chair. Each detail added another piece to the image of stability. Verl answered calmly. "He assists with maintenance," she explained. "We share meals." The lie somehow felt more honest than the truth the system demanded. Days passed, and their quiet routine deepened. Kelvin spoke about his past only in fragments. A former deep space navigator who had lost his ship after refusing an order that would have abandoned civilians. Verl spoke of her late husband, not of grief itself, but of how the city expected sorrow to follow a schedule. They were 2 people pushed to the edges of society, slowly finding balance together. Kelvin repaired the tear in her coat. He cooked meals that filled the apartment with warmth she had forgotten existed. He built a home around her, not with promises, but with steady effort. When the inspectors returned again, their demands grew harsher. They wanted visible affection, proof of emotional connection. Kelvin's calm finally cracked. "You want to watch 2 people pretend they care?" he said sharply. "That's not inspection. That's voyeurism pretending to be law." The air trembled with his defiance. Verl gently touched his arm. Enough. But Kelvin wasn't just defending her. He was defending the idea that a soul could not be measured or recorded. That night she asked him to stay in the bed beside her. Not for appearances, but for herself. Resting beside him, her hand against the steady rhythm of his heart, she felt the ghosts of her past slowly fade. The next day she deleted her late husband's final access code. The last digital thread tying her to the past disappeared. Soon after, the message arrived. Case file closed. Permit renewed. She was officially stable. She was free. Yet the silence that followed felt heavier than the storm. The arrangement was finished. So now you're free, Kelvin said quietly. It sounded like an ending, but Verl felt empty. She had fought so hard to survive that she had forgotten how to live. I stayed because you needed someone to prove you existed, Kelvin said gently. Now you don't need proof. Her throat tightened. If I ask you to stay now, she whispered, afraid the words might sound like obligation. You'll think it's just gratitude. Kelvin stepped closer. Then say it anyway, he said softly. If it's real, I'll know. And in the quiet hum of that sterile city, she finally found the courage to speak. Stay. One word and everything changed. They were no longer a contract. They were a choice. Kelvin told her about a distant place called Narian Haven, a colony beyond the reach of scanners and regulations, a place where people could exist without constant judgment. Let's leave, he said. It wasn't an escape. It was a beginning. They packed lightly, leaving behind the weight of their former lives. On the terrace, looking down at the endless grid of lights for the last time, Verl took Kelvin's hand. A simple touch. Promise. On the shuttle, as Orin Station shrank into a distant star, she finally felt the tight coil of fear in her chest begin to loosen. Peace, she realized, wasn't silence. It was the quiet rhythm of two lives moving forward together. They arrived at Narian Haven beneath twin suns, stepping into a world of damp earth and living air. No towers, no scanners, no silent judgment. They walked toward a small settlement, their long shadows stretching across the ground behind them. This, she thought, is what it means to choose. Not to be rescued, but to be seen. Kelvin looked at her, sunlight warming his face, and for the first time she saw a completely unguarded smile. Now we build something that isn't measured, he said. Together they walked into the open light, following the sound of their own footsteps and leaving behind a city that had forgotten what humanity truly meant. Their proof was no longer an address or a permit. It was the horizon they now shared. Please follow my channel for more videos. One click from you can change my life.